Derek, Diamond Experience!
Welcome to episode 342 of the Derek Diamond Experience podcast. I'm your host, Derek Diamond, coming off of an absolutely incredible night this past Saturday at Blue Wahoo Stadium with the Gulf Coast Filmmaker Showcase, which of course, the main event of the entire evening was the premiere of my short film, The Feature. And hopefully you've all enjoyed these past few episodes of the show, looking back at the making of the film, a behind-the-scenes look with the cast and crew. And it was an absolutely amazing night this past Saturday. We had almost 100 people in attendance, which was mind-blowing to me. I was not expecting that at all. We had a huge surge in ticket sales the day before, and it was an amazing night, one that I will absolutely never forget. So originally, we were going to have Daniel Carey on this week's podcast, but unfortunately, I had to reschedule my interview with him due to the fact that I've been battling a sinus infection off and on since the start of the year, and it started to come back in a more aggressive form early last week. And the day we were supposed to do the interview, I was starting to lose my voice, and rather than try and push through it and potentially lose my voice completely, we decided to reschedule, and he'll be on the show, I believe, in 2 weeks. So that interview will still happen. But then I thought, what am I going to do for this week's show? I had absolutely nothing on the docket, and I've been so busy with prepping for the premiere that I didn't have time to do anything. But Jeremy Branch, who you've heard these past few weeks filling in as guest host, came up with a really cool idea. Why don't we come on the podcast to do a post-mortem or a review of the night and talk about, what went well, what didn't, and possibly future plans for more screenings for the feature. So he and Chad Sanders will be on this week's podcast, and we're just going to talk about the night overall. And it was really fun getting to, look back at the evening now that we've had a couple of days to decompress and really think about what went well and what didn't. So hopefully you enjoy this look back at the premiere, but here is my conversation with Jeremy and Chad. So we're here with a special wrap-up episode about The Feature. You've heard the last 3 episodes where we've talked with the cast and crew about the behind-the-scenes of the film leading up to the premiere, which was this past Saturday. The premiere has happened. As I mentioned in the intro, it was an absolutely incredible night. And I've got 2 of the big players of the premiere to talk about it. Talk about maybe the reception of the film, the attendance, and some of the other stuff that happened. First up, we have the MC from the evening's festivities, Mr. Jeremy Branch. How are you, my friend?
What's up? Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad to be here. It's weird to not be hosting your show, Derek.
It got to that point where it was like, is it going to feel weird, like taking back the reins of hosting my show? It should have just been called the Jeremy Branch Experience at this point. Also joining us once again is producer Chad Sanders. Chad, how are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Yeah, you had a late night.
Yes, we were celebrating.
Yeah, you guys went to McGuire's, and you almost closed the place down.
That's long enough to hear the musicians' last song, but I think there was still another hour left in operation because they don't close until exactly 2:30. Even if it's empty, it's way till 2:30.
Oh, I always thought it was 2.
Yeah, a few of us. I think it's 2:30. But a few of us went there and hung out. Some people came by. Some people who couldn't make it to the premiere but wanted to ask us how it went and everything, and then I stayed at the bar with 1 or 2 friends after that. So yeah, it's a good night.
That's a good after party to the after party. So
I would say so.
So we got to start with this. You know, one of my biggest questions about the premiere was the attendance. Like, how many people are going to buy tickets and show up? And leading up the week of, you know, I kept getting updates from Charles Houston from the Blue Wahoos, which huge shout out to him, by the way. He went above and beyond what I expected anyone to do as far as meeting us at the stadium, helping to set up, and he stayed, you know, in the lounge while the premiere was going on and stayed until we all left. So huge shout out to Charles if you listen to this. Yeah, leading up to it, I was very curious about the attendance, and then he calls me the morning of and says, "You guys sold 54 tickets." And I'm just like, what? 54? And then including the comp tickets, we were going to have almost 100 people in attendance. So, Jeremy, how did you react to that? As someone who's been, you know, learning more about the process of making this film, and you emceed the event, how did you feel about seeing a crowd that big?
So I thought about it a bit ahead of time, and you know, I'm a believer. Don't get me wrong. I didn't mean to ever discount what it was going to end up like, but it occurred to me, maybe Derek should have just comped all the tickets. Like, maybe just open the door up, get as many people in there as you possibly can to see the film. That way it gets a little bit of notoriety. People are encouraged to just come out there, and filling the seats always looks good, right? Regardless if the tickets are sold or not. When you post the pictures to social media, people like to see a full room. So that said, realizing that you not only sold the place out, but then you also had all of these additional comp tickets, it was fantastic, man. I'm super proud of you. I think it turned out really good. I mean, the event essentially ran itself. It was so well managed. I know a lot of stuff went into making it happen ahead of time, but it's not like this was a wild group of people. Everybody was there to support the film, to be a part of that side of the process. And it was just super smooth. I really enjoyed it. Got to meet some really nice people. Shout out to Charles. That was the first time I'd ever talked to him. He was super cool. Lots of other people as well. A woman named Charlie Young, who is a fellow synthwave musician, which I thought that was weird to have two of us in the same place at the same time. It's kind of a niche-y thing, but I just, congratulations all the way around as far as that goes. I don't want to say I was shocked, but I was definitely impressed.
Chad, same question.
I have my hopes. I thought between the comp tickets and just me harassing people I know, and you harassing like your people you know, like your parents or something, you probably would have like at least a decent turnout. And if it didn't look like it was that big, well, then we'll just make the make the everyone's social media look like it was big. I mean, we're filmmakers, so like let's manipulate the camera. But when we got the final count, it went from like, is anyone going to show up, to, okay, do we have enough chairs? Do we need to move to a bigger venue? Do we need this, and that? And we just like kept our heads down and set up chairs, and went really well.
Yeah, and I will say that there was a possibility of moving the event the day of, but you know, Chad and I talked about it, and we both agreed that it was too late in the process to really do that, because it's impossible to get that message out to that many people when you don't have their contact information. Had it been like Tuesday or Wednesday, then I'd be more inclined to say, hey, let's potentially figure something else out. But in walking through the event, you know, I think it was in December or November when we went to the stadium and mapped everything out. We had planned to have a capacity of 85. When it surpassed that, we were like, okay, if we seat this number of people, there's not going to be that many people standing. And at the end of the day, there were only, 4 or 5 of us standing, 3 of us on this podcast that were standing. So I think it worked out perfectly.
Yeah. I feel like I wanted to ask y'all before we started recording. I've been watching Ted Lasso lately, and I've got to say that the vibe, like, it transitioned nicely. I don't know if everybody listening is aware of where the venue was, but it's inside the Wahoo Stadium, and we walk in, like the entrance is the same place that the players take the field. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like the kind of corridor, and then off to the right of that is, it was essentially a locker room, but it was done up with a really good sound system. You had a good projector screen in there. The image looked really good. The sound was good, but like my wife and I just now finished season 2 of that. And so when I walked in, I was like, "Ooh, this is cool. I like this."
Yeah, the Wahoo's home locker room, it was renovated in 2020, right before and a little bit into the pandemic. Actually, no, I think they did wrap it up by the time the pandemic started. But it looks really nice. Has very clean carpet. It does not look at all like you would expect a baseball locker room to look like.
Does not smell like balls either, which is totally
No.
Oh, that's an added bonus.
No.
So when we were trying to think of a venue, that was one of the first places that I thought of after we went through, we went through a few other local venues as well. But then I thought, well, I did work there for 8 years, so maybe they'll let us use the venue. So thankfully they did. And, huge props to them for allowing us to do it. But I think, it absolutely went, like you said, Jeremy, about as smoothly as it could have. And how do you guys feel and Chad, we'll start with you. How do you feel like we'll start with the documentary. And there's a funny story about that I hope you get into, that we kind of had a little exchange after that. How do you feel the reception for the documentary went?
I think it went really well. I had every intention of, when the doc started, to sneak out that back door and go ahead and get my food from Melt, which was killer, and then just sit and eat while other people watch it. And then it started, and I realized, like, you need to know how this plays. Having edited it, you're like the last person to check to make sure it works for the crowd. And it went really well. All the funny parts were funny. People learned a lot. They got really interested in the movie that the Nightlings, that Mylon and Ray are in the process of still editing. Are you talking about the story about about Mylon and what Mylon said that had a reaction in the crowd? You talking about that?
So what happened was, we showed the Nightlings documentary first.
Oh, okay, that part.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me do both.
Okay.
It was really interesting. At one point, Mylon in the interview in the doc said, "I just love post-apocalyptic horror sci-fi. Finding different ways for people to suffer and then make them go through that's really interesting to me." I'm paraphrasing. That's kind of it. And the crowd laughed. And I said on mic, I didn't realize that was a joke until I saw this with the crowd. I thought that was just like, that's kind of interesting take on that. And Ray started, during the Q&A, Ray's like, "It's not a joke." And I'm like, no, we'll debate it. But the thing you're talking about, that I don't like, it seemed like a stroke of genius if we had planned it, but it wasn't. It was complete serendipitous magic. It was just something else making it happen. Not to get to spoiler territory, but it is in the first 10 seconds of the feature. Our main characters are having a conversation about a documentary they just watched about making a film, and it inspires them to go make their own film. And we didn't realize we did that on purpose. It was really more like, well, I have this thing I edited that's pretty good, and I would like to have people see it. It just got into Pensacola. Do you want to try that? It could have easily been something else, but it was just like, it's like you don't even know the thing you want to have happen is happening. So
yeah, it's like, as soon as the feature started, I heard you laughing, and I'm like, what is so funny? And then you told me, and I'm like, oh my God, that's just, it couldn't have been planned any better.
I had to walk to the back hallway so I wouldn't be loud. And Steve's like, "What's going on?" And I explained it, and I just was like, I was doing this, which means I'm having like an epiphany moment. I was just like, you ever get into like really excited about something, like, I got it. I was like, this is the hand of God. I was like, I was having a religious moment back there. Yeah, I was fortunate. It was great.
Jeremy, same question. How do you feel about the like seeing and hearing the reaction for the Nightlings documentary?
Good edit, Chad. for sure.
Thank you.
I do a bit of video editing as well, and you get so for me, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I will get so like into the tiniest little bits of footage, the smallest little lines of dialogue, and every once in a while things play so different in an audience that like I really related with what you just now said of like, is this a joke? I don't know, there's nobody around to like do a cue. Maybe I could recontextualize it with like a noise in the background or something, so at least they thought it was a joke. I don't know. But it played really well. You know what I mean? Like I thought it ended up working really good. So I enjoyed it. You know, like Derek and myself are part of the I don't know, panel of judges for the Pensacola Short Film Festival, which means we had to you know, trudge through 60 plus films on every end of the spectrum, from, you know, just like fantastic stuff that looks like it was put out by a Hollywood studio to stuff that looks like it was shot on an old camera phone from 10 years ago, and like I said, and everything in between. But as much as I liked those creatures out there, I was wondering, without the context of the Nightlings, how our audience is going to view this. So I actually thought it was like really insightful to see that people responded well to the documentary without having seen the feature itself. So like I thought that was interesting, and it kind of makes me reassess what my initial thought was, and that's that like nobody's going to care about this if they don't get that first. And what's interesting about this project is it's kind of taken center stage. And I, you know, I don't know if y'all know, but I carry myself like I'm confident. But like after I got home last night, I was like, man, I really framed the conversation in the Q&A too much about the Nightlings when the project at hand was those creatures out there. So yeah, I think it works really well on its own, and the audience seemed to really enjoy it as well. So I think it was cool. And then the meta-ness of, this is a movie about making movies. This is a documentary about a movie being made. So yeah, it was a cool double feature.
And I had a feeling that it would play really well with audiences because a lot of people who were at the premiere are local filmmakers.
Absolutely.
And we're all fans of movies and how they are made. And documentaries are one of the reasons that I got into filmmaking, because once I found out about the process, it's like when DVDs started coming out and you had like the behind the scenes featurettes on like different characters or just the movie itself.
Yeah.
And you see how the whole thing is made and you're like, that's really cool. Like, that's really fascinating. And I know a lot of other filmmakers are like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why when Chad pitched the idea to me, that it would play well with the audience. So let's get into the feature. Much like Chad said, when he thought about running out to Melt when those creatures out there started, I thought about doing the same as soon as I put a dramatic pause between the two movies by design. And then as soon as my logo popped up, I'm like, well, here we go. So, Jeremy, we'll start with you, and then after Chad, I'll get into my thoughts on it. But how do you feel like the feature played to an audience? There we go. You stole my answer.
Wouldn't it be messed up if I can't? No, it's okay. So I'd seen the feature before. I saw it sans the music. It wasn't quite finished yet. And to be honest, it all came together beautifully. I think you mentioned that Samantha or Sam had actually done the editing for it. Just a fantastic job. A lot of the humor hit, and like not just like polite chuckles or like the obligatory, you know, studio audience clap kind of thing because the cue lights come on. Like people organically were really enjoying it, and that was like a great. I don't have the same amount on the line, but hearing what you just now said, I can relate to that feeling of just like you kind of tense up, like how is this going to go over? And I imagine that by the time it was done for you, you had to feel good about it, because we, all three of us, and also Steve, were standing in the back. We had this perfect vantage point. We were watching the audience as much as, if not more than we were watching the movie. As I said, we've all already seen it in some iteration or another. but to be able to walk was like a super cool feeling. So I know how it was for me, and I just felt like, oh man, my buddy nailed this. So I imagine it had to feel really good for you.
Chad, same question.
Yeah, big shout out to like the filmmakers corner in the back. Because like that's where I absolutely intended to stand. I had no intention of sitting anywhere. And Derek's like, yeah, no, it's we're also right by the door. I know, I just now realized in case things
In case
go
you need to
wrong,
run.
In case things went south.
Leave the car running. And it's just it's like me, you two, Steve, Shannon Williams was hanging back there too. I noticed Shannon was like leaning against the locker next to an empty seat. Like it was like William Renee empty seat, and he's like, "Nah, man, I gotta hang out with the guys in the back." I was like, "Oh, that was cool." I don't remember which one this was. But I remember at one point I couldn't stop grinning. I was like so excited to like show this thing. It could have been either or because I was stoked to show though. But at one point I was so excited, and then I tapped Derek on the shoulder, and he turns around, and I don't say anything. I just want him to see, like, just the look on my face. I was just having a blast because it's scary. Because I also have my logo on that thing. Derek's is front and center, as well it should be in every way. But it's the little bit of ownership I have. It's also a responsibility, and oh man, thank God we pulled it off. Because like it's fine. This makes everything totally worth it. This is great. All the freaking out on rescheduling things and this and that, and then other stuff going on. We're just like, doesn't matter. This was great.
Yeah, all the hardships, with the rescheduling and days running long, it was all worth it in the end. Mm-hmm. It's like you said, Jeremy. I think Samantha did a fantastic job with having not edited anything in her life.
Impressive.
She put together a short film. Because I told her, I'm like, my first thing was just videos of me and my friends goofing off and just somehow splicing it together to make something. So what you did was something really worthwhile. Not to say that doing something with friends isn't worthwhile, but as far as like a short film, she did an absolutely incredible job, and just in such a short amount of time too. I knew once we got to the scene with Rob and Jace and hearing the reactions to that, I'm like, okay, this is a hit. And then hearing, the moments that I thought would hit as far as humor goes, all did. Thomas's character was a huge hit, and I think all the characters were a hit as well, because, and I mentioned this in the Q&A you did, Jeremy, but I think there's so many aspects of the feature that are relatable to people. The potentially quitting your job to follow your passion is something that I think we can all relate to at some point in our lives. The romantic portion of the story is something that most of us can relate to. Even if the relationships didn't work out and you're in a different one, everyone's kind of gone through that phase of like, would the friendship work better if it was more? Everybody's had that person that might come in and wreck your whole life. Everybody has that bad boss that they've worked for. So I think there's endless amounts of relatability in the feature.
Let me ask you this, Derek, because you said something that was telling last night, and it was basically that you a lot of times want to have pretty tight reins as far as creative control. Just because you want to doesn't mean that you always do. But did you feel a fear that Sam was going to like kill your darlings, that she was going to cut too much out, that did you ever feel like, man, I need to go in there and make sure she's, doing the parts that I want done? Or did you kind of just hands off and let her take care of it?
It was really a hands-off approach. And
nice.
What I liked about her editing the movie is if I had done it, I would have just done it the way I wanted to do it. But I think with editing, it's important to put a separate eye on the project.
Yeah,
and yes, she was involved with the pre-production and with the filming itself, but I think it was good because like she has different tastes in movies and shows that I do. But what I thought she did was, was honestly probably better than what I would have done as far as certain cuts and certain angles that she used and everything. So I was very proud of her for taking the initiative to do that. But no, and it's like I mentioned in the Q&A, as far as having control of everything. And I like to have open collaboration with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took ideas from Chad, took some from Steve and Kevin and others. As far as it's more of a logistics thing of where I'm like, I always feel like I have to jump in and take care of something. So the toughest part for me was letting that go. Like, okay, Chad's going to take care of this. Samantha's going to take care of that. I don't have to worry about it. Because with the Parker syndrome,
not the kind of control freak I am, because I literally, I'm like, nobody could edit my stuff as well as I could because I know what I'm trying to do. And then lo and behold, you pass it off to somebody and they're able to do it even better.
Yeah. And she would show the project to me, in certain stages, like, what do you think of this? Or, does this work? Did I do this right? And there were little suggestions that I would make, but for the most part, I didn't really change anything she did.
Yeah, if you told me that Sam had been editing for 5 years, if you told me that this was her, 10th project, I would have taken that at face value. Like there is nothing about this project that says, oh, this is her first time editing. Like she came in and nailed it. I think that's really impressive.
Well, and she's a very quick learner with most things. Like
Obviously.
she's a very observant person. She picks things up very fast. So it was surprising and also not surprising. I told the story of she had the movie put together in 2 days. I was surprised, but at the same time, I was like, I'm also not, because she's a very goal-oriented person. So
yeah, nice.
I knew it was going to work. But one thing I did want to say, you mentioned the music. You guys hadn't heard any of the score that Emily Varley did. So, Jeremy, what did you think of the score and how it added to the film?
So, Pensacola is a little big city. I guess actually it's just, it's a pretty moderately sized place. But I say that to say that I actually know Emily Varley a little bit. I know her husband. He works on pinball machines. He actually had a couple of pinball machines out at his place in Milton. So we went out there one night and hung out. He had this really cool Godzilla pinball machine, and I met Emily that night. And so to see it kind of come back around and be like, oh, Emily Varley is the person scoring Derek's movie. I wonder what that's going to sound like. And I really like the style that she used. There's a bunch of different ways that people can approach scoring movies. And I think that she nailed the sound of the tone. I think that's the most important thing is coming in with big sweeping strings and stuff wouldn't really make or it wouldn't make sense in the context of this movie. So she used contemporary stuff with a good rhythm section in it. And I thought it propelled the story along. It kept the momentum going. It was really effective. It synced up really nicely in the edit as well. And I'm curious, did she do it to the footage or did she send the music?
She did it to the footage. So I sent her the same cut that I sent to you to watch to prep for the interviews. And she synced it to the
really cool
to the movie. And she would send me the tracks and say, this starts at, 3:45 and should end at 5:30 something.
Nice.
She also did the score for the Parker syndrome. So I was very curious to hear the differences, because with the Parker syndrome, it was kind of a depressing, dramatic story. So there was a lot of piano and a lot of melancholy music. And I loved especially what she did with the opening track, because I'm like, this sounds like it would be something I'd hear in a coffee shop.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
It was really cool. I liked I like how a lot of stuff would just start with a beat or end with a beat, and not to give anything away, but the last musical track with the final line of dialogue, it took it that last line from being like, oh, that's clever, and that's him. That's the character doing what the character needs to be doing. The character has grown to, pimp move, dog. Like it was just like a fat beat over it, and I was like, this is
100%.
all right, all right. Swagger to this. I liked it. The first time I saw it too, the music, it was crazy. She did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it reminded me of a '90s movie without sounding like more. I don't know, more ska. It was more like a contemporary '90s like vibe without sounding dated. Kind of just inspired by it, because you were talking about Derek how like this was inspired by a lot of Kevin Smith's type of relationship, someone trying to do something with their life type of movies.
and the crazy thing is, I didn't really give her any direction with the tracks. You know,
Oh wow.
she told me that she had a pretty clear vision of what she thought it would be, and then she'd send me the tracks, and like I don't have any critiques. They're great. And I will also give a shout out to Jeffrey Peacock and Tommy House, who lent us one of their tracks to use. So this is a mild spoiler, but I have to tell it for the context of the song. So there's a climatic moment in the movie where Matt and Katie have this huge argument, and Matt storms out of the room. The crew and everyone look shocked, except for our good friend Doug, who's listening to metal music and using his boom pole as a guitar. So what you hear him listening to in his headphones is the song that they supplied. So huge shout out to them. I've actually known Jeffrey for a long time. We went to the same high school. Him and Samantha are good friends. So reached out to him, and he was more than happy to lend us the music.
What was the conversation like? Hey, I want this song, or hey, I need something heavy. Like, what was the note? Did you just know what kind of music he did?
Yeah, like on a scale from like 1 to 10, how much did you want your face to melt off?
It was more of a thing where I laid out the scene to him as far as how it went, and then kind of described what I was envisioning in my head. And then he sent over a track, I think back in August or September. But then a couple of days before the premiere, he's like, "Hey, I think this will work better." And
nice.
it did. So
Cool.
Added it, and the music. I've said this about a lot of films, especially I'll use John Carpenter's Halloween as an example.
Good
That
example.
movie would not be as good if it did not have that opening track. I think that's just a fact.
Yep.
The music adds so much. It can make or break scenes. And I think Emily's score and Jeffrey and Tommy's song made every scene that is featured.
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of on a high from, like, we're recording this Sunday night, so we're like just over 24 hours after the premiere. I'm still riding a high from it. I still can't believe the attendance, the reception. I guess as we start to wrap up here, Jeremy, why don't we give your final overall thoughts of the evening?
So self-critique time. Let me spend the next 5 minutes self-loathing about the way that I handled the Q&A at the end. No, not like that. It's so weird though. Like I feel like I do pretty good, and then afterwards I think back and I'm like and it like it eats at me, man. I don't know what that's about. But so when I thought about it, I was like, I wish I wouldn't have pressed so hard about the Nightlings side of things. That was so.
Well,
if
I still think you did a great job, though.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and the documentary is about making the movie, so that's you're in theme with the documentary itself too.
The documentary is supposed to inspire interest in the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I read it. So with the three of us, I feel like we're in sync because we talked about it a couple times before. Like, I feel like on that end of things, I think it went really well. I don't think it didn't go well on the other end of things, but I was just thinking about like the way I approached it. Like, I hope that was okay with them. So if y'all are watching this, apologies about that. I think it was good, but I thought about it. But as far as the presentation, as far as like, there's certain things that are gonna just completely destroy an event like this. Bad audio, I think, is probably number one. If you don't have a good sound system, it's just going to be rough. And I think that it was clear and it sounded fantastic regardless of where you were at. in relation to the screen itself. So everywhere had good audio. I felt like the attendance was exceptional. Like we discussed at the beginning, that was a major thing. I'm sure it would have, and I'm sure you would have been gracious and excited if 10 people showed up, but I imagine it would have hit slightly different. And this just made it feel like a win, like a triumph. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the way that it turned out, it was at capacity. You couldn't have put more people in there, and these people just all had such a good reaction to it. We had a gathering after party in the building after the screening itself, and everybody was in there having a good time, networking, mingling, talking about their love of the movies, talking about their love of these particular movies that were playing. So like, it was a cool experience. I'm glad I got to be a part of it, but most importantly for you guys, like, I'm glad that it went well, and I hope that it encourages you to do. Chad, I think I heard you mention it last night. I hope it encourages you to do more screenings, and I obviously of the feature. If y'all got into the into the realm of screening other movies or something like that, I just think it's really good for the community. So I think it was awesome. Can't wait to see what's next as far as all of that goes, and I'll be there with bells on.
Chad?
Well, before I answer that, I'm going to ask you all a question. What was your favorite audience question from last night? Yeah, because we had some good ones. It kind of just turned into a conversation with a bunch of people at one point. Derek, do you have one?
I did like Chris Jadala's question about the most challenging moment, just because it inspired some funny stories with, like, and we've talked about it on the podcast, but with the phone ringing at New Yorker, people trying to come in and things like that. So I think that inspired good interaction and then led to more questions.
I liked when the dude asked how each of us were going to suffer. I don't think I understood the question, but I liked how Mylan tried to Carradine me to death. He straight up said he was gonna choke me with the mic cord. So I was like, I'm into it.
That was old T.S. Strickland. That's Terry Strickland. He's my best friend, and
he's very funny.
He's
he likes
great.
to stir the pot. Yeah, that was a good one.
What was your favorite question, Chad?
I love when Renee asked Mylan, is all the way in the back, standing next to Samantha, asked, like, so you're still editing the movie? And he goes, yeah, we're still editing the movie. And it's like, well, why don't you just get Derek's wife to do it?
That was really good.
And I was like, that's a good point. That's a good question. And it's also very funny.
It's a good joke too. Yeah.
It's a solid bit, dude.
It's funny because
overall,
Samantha asked me afterwards. She was like, "So who was that that asked the question?"
I saw Renee sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh, Renee and Samantha must know each other. They seem so close." I was just like hanging out. Oh man. What was the question I'm supposed to be answering?
What was your favorite audience question?
The one I'm
overall thoughts of the evening.
Overjoyed with how well it went. All the people who came, people in the local film community who I respected what we did. My friends were able to make it, not all of them, but all those who could. My mom could come.
That was awesome.
She called me today just to tell me how proud she was. And it's not like she doesn't say that enough. She says that enough. She's a good mom. But it's just with this, it was really special because reading the script, I was like, oh, Derek wrote a script about us, about the people who quit their jobs to go make films or just even do commercial work, just anything other than sitting at a desk or flipping burgers. So just that, and the fact that, we didn't run out of anything. Everything worked. Everyone found it. We had a great food. We were in a cool place, and just catching up. And we already have people kind of interested in the next one. There's people who want to see it again or want to show other people. There's people asking about what we're doing next, like the next thing we're working on, so they can see that. And Derek, there's people asking about if we'll get in more details, but there's people asking about like they want to be involved in the event the next time, like a venue space or something along those lines. So it's generating buzz. We're starting to get buzz. We're starting to get buzz, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that's
all you want.
Yeah, and to go off on what Chad was saying, I try to go into things like this with really no expectation. That way I'm not extremely disappointed if it doesn't go the way I expected. But I was overjoyed when the feature ended and I heard the reaction to it. It validated all the hard work. All the time we put into planning, all the time we put into making the movie. It validated everything. So I could not have been happier with it. And I was just, when we got home, I was just laying in bed and I was not tired at all. Like I was still so wired from the night. Was thinking about how well it went. And I couldn't sleep because of how excited I was. And it makes me want to do, and I know we've lightly talked about it, but I definitely do want to do more screenings of the feature throughout the year. Maybe as early as, say, like late spring, maybe do another one. I'm probably going to start submitting it to festivals in February, and we'll see what kind of buzz we can get from that. But I really do think, and I know I'm biased, but I think this movie can resonate with a lot of people.
Let me ask you, did you do any of the festival submissions with the Parker syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
So you know how to go about this process, and you said you're going to start probably in the springtime?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in February or March.
Oh, okay. So like once you get on the other side of this, and I don't even know what that timetable looks like, is there a point in time where you decide to like, hey, I'm going to package this and sell it off of a website? Have you considered uploading it to YouTube straight? Do you have a plan for like making it, available to the masses at some point?
My plan as of now is to have it run through the festival circuit for probably a year, maybe like early 2024. And then once that's done, post it to YouTube. I am open to other ideas. If anyone wants to throw any out there, I'm always listening for new ideas, but
Sure.
That's the plan as of right now.
Cool. People literally were asking last night about how they could watch your movies outside of that context. So if you're watching this video right now, you heard it here first, folks. Give it about a year and you'll be able to see it in some form or another.
Well, and that's what'll make the screenings more valuable, is that's where you can go see it for now.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, last thing, Jeremy, we'll start with you. Do you have any social media you want to throw out there so the listeners can follow you?
Check out the Pop Culture Nihilist on YouTube if you're interested in more kind of movie-related pop culture stuff. I'm growing a channel called Lucid Memory. So if I throw too much at you, you're going to forget all of it. Check out the Pop Culture Nihilist for movies or Lucid Memory for music. And appreciate you having me, man.
Chad, same question.
Personal social media is the same as my website, One Chad Beyond. So if you want to check out some of the work I'm doing or just see what I've been up to, there's that. I started releasing episodes of my old podcast, Movie Night Autopsy, again. I got a couple in the bank that I'm starting to get out and going to start doing that again. Just sitting on a couch with friends talking about a movie and having a conversation that's twice as long as the damn movie. That's my type of podcasting. Just get lost and forget what you're talking about. And if you ever want, go watch my old sketches. Bit House Comedy. Look us up.
I feel like now that this is the third time you've been on my show, I owe you a guest appearance on yours.
Yeah, we got to figure that out. I just need to start scheduling. I have a big list of who wants to be on it and the movies they want to watch. The rule is at least one person involved hasn't seen the movie. So it's a fresh conversation for at least one person. It's now just going to be like one-on-one, me with one other person. I find the conversations easier to kind of edit that way and kind of direct it, so we can always try to find a loose format that works. Because back in the day, we would just talk about the movie plot too much and not really get too much into the context. That's how we got longer episodes. And I thought people didn't like that till I started listening to Blank Check and realized those guys go off on crazy tangents. And but it's one of my favorite podcasts. Yeah, we just got to figure out either make a suggestion of something I haven't seen or something you haven't seen. The thing is like trying to think of guests. I know I want to have Steve on, and I want him to talk about Spielberg because that's his like bread and butter. Do you know how hard it is to like try and figure out a Spielberg movie he hasn't seen?
Is
the
there
answer
one?
is no. No,
I was about to
he's
ask
seen
the
them all.
same thing.
I think I have to be a Spielberg movie I haven't seen, which is on my like 50-50 if you really want to get into like the weeds of like Always or I don't know, Empire of the, it'll probably be Empire of the, let's be honest, it's probably going to be Empire of the Sun. Oh no, I've seen Bridge of Spies. I like
a good
Bridge
one.
of Spies.
Yeah.
That's a good dad movie. I just like to throw it on.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll just figure that out. I'll have both of you on. That'll be great. And we'll just come over. It's real chill. Just shoot at the house.
Yeah, I'd love to. Derek, on behalf of both me and Chad, how many episodes would you say a guest has to do before they start getting royalties off your podcast?
Jeez.
Don't let me put you on the spot, but I think it's 3.
Part of me wants to just troll Chad and say 4, but we'll say 3.
Jeremy, how many times have you been on?
Over the years, several. Over the last month, this would be my 4th.
Well, Jeremy's got me beat by all that then.
Because Jeremy, I think you've been on the show besides the feature episodes. You may have. I know you've definitely been on once because I had you on as a solo guest.
And I think maybe twice, but it might have been Nerd Cave related.
Yeah, I think it was Nerd Cave related.
And then you've been on my YouTube channel multiple times as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Check those out, folks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, fun stuff. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to chat for this post-mortem of the feature premiere. Thank you for all your help with making the night great.
Yeah, man. Most definitely. It was a pleasure.
I'm excited to do it again.
Thanks again to Jeremy and Chad for coming on the show to recap our premiere of the feature. As I said, really fun night. We'll definitely be doing more screenings of the feature in the Pensacola area and maybe beyond later on in the year. So stay tuned to social media for that. If you want to check out the latest happenings of the feature, you can follow the movie at The Feature Movie on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For next week's show, it's the return of the top 5 list, and I can't wait to do this one. Top 5 childhood cartoons. This is going to be a very hard list because I was a cartoon fanatic as a kid. I know a lot of people were, so we're going to do our best to narrow it down to 5. There's definitely going to be some honorable mentions. But until then, just head over to linktree.com/DDiamondPodcast where you can find all the subscription information, where you can find the podcast, social media. Everything is at linktree.com/DDiamondPodcast. And don't forget, leave a review. The more reviews I get, the more visible I become to the podcasting public. It really does help. The more reviews that the show gets, if people are searching for podcasts, they're more likely to see this one if it has more positive feedback. So would very much appreciate that. But that's going to do it for this week's show. So enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll see you guys back here next week for another awesome episode of the Derek Diamond Experience podcast.